will finally stand up to the president and join us. Senator Murray, and then she'll have to go because she's going on the floor on equal pay amendment.
All right. Thank you, Leader Schumer. Last November, families across the country sent a very clear message. They want us to look for ways to make sure everyone can get quality, affordable health care. But instead of listening to that message, President Trump is doing the exact opposite of what families want. He is fighting to strike down health care and protections for hundreds of millions of people. If President Trump has his way in court, people with pre-existing conditions will lose protections or maybe even lose their health care. People covered through the exchanges, including state-based exchanges, will lose their health care. People covered through Medicaid expansion will lose their health care. Young adults covered by their parents' plan will lose their health care. And people covered through their jobs will see their costs rise. If President Trump has his way in court, health care costs for families across the country will skyrocket. And we will go back to the bad old days when insurance companies could not only discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions, they can refuse to cover maternity care, contraception, mental health care, prescription drugs, and other essential services. And they could implement annual lifetime caps on how much a plan covers, even for people who get their insurance on the job. President Trump recently said, and I quote, "The Republican Party will soon be known as the party of health care." But people across the country know better than to take him seriously, because you can't be the party of health care when you're trying to take it away from millions of people, or when you're fighting to make health care more expensive and further out of reach, or when you are constantly treating the care people rely on to keep themselves and their family healthy, the care people need to stay alive like a political football. If President Trump actually wants people to take him seriously on health care, he can start by having the Department of Justice immediately reverse course in the Texas lawsuit. And if any Republican in Congress wants people to take their party seriously on health care, they should be pulling out every single stop to protect families' coverage. Unfortunately, we have not seen any of that. So today we are calling on President Trump and Republicans in Congress to join Democrats in defending families' health care instead of trying to strike it down. People across the country are watching this closely. They will not forget who stood with them and who tried to take their health care away.
Senator Wyden. Thank you, Senator Murray.
Thank you. Leader Schumer said it well, and I'm just going to make a couple of quick points. First of all, if you throw out the entire Affordable Care Act, America will be on the fast track to higher prescription drug prices and worse health care, especially those with pre-existing conditions. And the fact is, those with pre-existing conditions with the Trump agenda are really going to get hit with a double whammy. Not only are they going to lose their protection that they now have from discrimination if they have a pre-existing condition, but the Trump crowd wants to drive them to junk insurance coverage. Junk insurance coverage often doesn't cover affordable medicine. So this really, at a minimum, it's almost a triple whammy, but it just hits those with the pre-existing conditions again and again. Finally, in my view, this obliterates the Trump campaign promise to hold down the costs of medicine and improve health care. Repeatedly, the president said this. But for example, if the president has his way and you throw out the ACA in court, seniors' drug costs are going to go way up because Medicare Part D donut hole benefits, they're going to be ripped apart. Also, Part B premiums are going to go up. And by the way, the big pharmaceutical companies get a big windfall. That's why we're pulling out all the stops to make sure that Americans know what's at stake here. We want to build on the Affordable Care Act, not throw it in the trash.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. We've come a long way from repeal and replace. Now Republicans' promise is that they are going to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with absolutely nothing. How gullible do Republicans think the American public is? They have never had a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. They don't have a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. They are never, ever, ever going to have a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. Why? Because Republicans are perfectly happy allowing insurance companies to be in charge of your health care. They are perfectly happy to allow insurance companies to make billions of dollars off of your health care. This has been the truth from the beginning, and it is the truth today. If you end the Affordable Care Act with no replacement, it is a humanitarian catastrophe for this country. 20 million people losing insurance overnight. Rates skyrocketing to the point of total unaffordability. Republicans in Congress can't distance themselves rhetorically from the president when they have the chance to sign on to legislation that will stop this assault on the ACA from happening. I hope there's at least one or two or three brave souls in the Republican Party who's willing to try to save this country from the catastrophe that would be the end of the Affordable Care Act with no replacement. And we will be hard at work trying to convince them to do so, trying to save this country from policy peril and trying to save our Republican friends from political peril to join us in this effort.
Yes.
On immigration, the president again reiterated his calls to possibly shut down the border just now. He says that he's willing to risk trade for matters of security if you don't make a deal.
Well, the economic disaster to the country would be huge, and my guess is that cooler heads will prevail upon the president not to do it. It'll be a disaster for him and disaster for the country.
On paid family leave, a couple of Senate Republicans are coming out with various plans that would pay for a paid family leave program by moving their benefits from retirement. What are Senate Democrats?
Well, look, we much prefer the plans that many of our people have introduced, which actually puts new money into the system. You know, people are hard-pressed. They don't have a lot of money for retirement. So to force them to take money out of retirement to get paid family leave is robbing Peter to pay Paul, is just putting them between a rock and a hard place. Better to slightly raise the payroll and put that into paid family leave, which is what we have proposed. Yes.
Joe Biden has had a couple of women come forward and say that he touched them in ways that were unwelcome to them. Do you have any concerns about the former vice president's behavior? Well,
let me say this. First, everyone deserves to be heard, so I salute the women who have come forward to tell their stories. When asked about candidates running, I've always said they should run if they want to, and then the voters will weigh the pros and cons and decide for themselves.
On disaster relief, if Republicans aren't willing to move off their...
You got to speak up a little.
Sorry, on disaster relief, if Republicans aren't willing to move off their current offer, how does this end?
Well, the Republicans screwed this up to a fare-thee well. We had a bill in the House that helped everybody. It didn't really help the Middle West as much because it was for 2018 disasters, not 2019. But Senators Shelby and Leahy worked out a plan. Everything was moving along, and guess who came in and messed it up as usual? The president. He went to a Republican lunch last Tuesday, said, I don't want aid for Puerto Rico. They've received $91 billion, which no one knows where that came up from. We offered, Senator Leahy offered a compromise, which would have both funded money in the Midwest and money for Puerto Rico. We will offer that amendment again. And we will actually offer increased money for the Midwest. The Republican bill doesn't give any new money for the Midwest. It just includes them in the existing money, so they'll have to fight with, Florida and Texas and all the people who had the 2018 disasters. And I'd like those people who stand here from those Midwestern states to vote for our amendment, not to say they won't vote for it because it has money for Puerto Rico. If you care about Iowa and Nebraska and Missouri and the flooding, you'll vote for our amendment, which A, has more money, and has a good chance of passing the House, which the Republican bill does not.
Senator Schumer,
last one.
Do you think that they are trying to pin this on Democratic senators because with your presidential hopefuls talking about the disasters in Iowa and talking about the Iowa caucus?
I think they never really care that much about the people in disaster areas, so they like to go through the motions but not get it done. But it's easy to see through, and when we offer our amendment to fund the Midwest at an increased rate and fund Puerto Rico properly, we'll really see where our Republican friends, particularly those from the Midwest, stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.